Well, for those who don't know, we had our diocesan convention over the weekend, and our delegates were Jerry, who seems very excited about it, and Sedona, who seemed less excited about it when I talked to her this morning. I'm kind of in the less excited about it camp. It was great to see some people, but we didn't gather in person. It was mostly a virtual conference, so I was just sitting at a desk in front of a computer drinking tea while everything transpired. So it didn't really have quite the same impact when people from all over the diocese would gather like we did in the past. So hopefully we'll get back to that. But one of the things about the diocesan convention is it totally kind of threw off my whole sermon preparation routine. So I'm not really as prepped as I usually would be. When I lived in West Virginia, the bishop kindly would write a sermon that he directed all of us to deliver on the Sunday after convention, just for this reason. But that is not the practice here in central New York. But as I was sitting through the convention and thinking about all the people and the 80 or so congregations that were represented there, and some of them are larger and maybe a little more thriving, and some are really, really tiny. There are some churches where like basically everybody who goes to church is on the vestry. I mean, they're tiny little communities, and yet they do amazing and important things, that they are no less a house of God than, a rich, wealthy parish somewhere else. You'll be happy to know that St. Luke's is somewhere in the top 20. Last time I checked, we were about 16th in terms of like size. So there's not a lot of huge churches here in our diocese, but we're all still continuing to do good work and to come together and to sing God's praises. And I was sort of encouraged, I have to be honest. Sometimes, when you get beyond the level of the parish, the church can be a little discouraging. But I was quite encouraged by what I saw and by what I heard. And I was particularly taken, we had a presentation on Saturday on congregational development. And basically what they were talking about is all of the things that we no longer see, but that are sort of barriers to people who want to come to church, right? Paul Frolick, who's the rector in Liverpool, talked about a church he was at in Pittsburgh where they had a beautiful, beautiful sign. It was the best possible church sign you could have. It was just really lovely, and they could show pictures, and it was digital, and they had their name, and it was big, and they were on a busy street. Unfortunately, the sign was oriented so that as you drove by, you couldn't actually see it. But it was a glorious, glorious sign. Right, and so that made me think about the ways that perhaps we, one of the things that people often tell me is that the Episcopal Church is the best kept secret. And I don't know why we're keeping it a secret. I hope all of you are talking about it and sharing about it. I would love to see if you're on the Facebook or one of the other social medias, but not the Twitter, because that seems to be going downhill. But if you're on one of the social medias, I would love for you to share sort of your experience. And this kind of gets back to my idea of evangelism. Evangelism, I think, is really important. And most of us have this idea of evangelism as like, the Jehovah's Witnesses going on knocking on people's doors. And what is that? What's that magazine, Eileen? Awake, yeah. So they give you the magazine, the Watchtower, that's the other one, right? Yeah, the Watchtower. Yeah, that they hand out, and they're always so nice, those folks, and they're always dressed really well. But I don't know how effective of a strategy that really is. And a lot of people think about when they're trying to think about evangelism, they think that your job is to convince people to believe in God or Jesus or something like that. And I don't think that's not really your responsibility. The scriptures are pretty clear that actually that's God's responsibility. God does all that work. God changes our hearts. God enters into us and opens our eyes. Our job is not to convince people that Jesus is real, or that Jesus has an effect in our lives. And I think that people who are really focused on that, the kind of churches that are really, really, really trying to convince you that Jesus is real, they're the ones that buy all the billboards that say Jesus is real. I think they have a lot more doubts than perhaps we might. I think that they're motivated by fear that maybe they don't really believe. And I think that they're motivated by a sense that God is weak and needs their protection. But of course, God doesn't need their protection or ours, and he doesn't need us to convince the world that God exists. God exists whether we believe it or not. But God does offer a transformation, and our job is to think about the thing that we love about being here. What is the thing or two that you love about being here? Whether it's the singing of the songs, even though occasionally there's a hymn we don't all know, we still love to get together and say, this is a great singing congregation. Or maybe it's the seeing of people that you've shared a lifetime with, that you've gone through. Maybe you love coming in and doing the altar guild before church on Saturday when you're here in the sanctuary and the lights are out and it's just the little light coming through the stained glass window and you're here by yourself preparing the items for the sacrament, and it's sort of a holy practice. Or maybe it's making coffee. Maybe you just love coffee hour. I know there's a couple of people here who just, that seems to be really their thing, right? Or any number of reasons that you love being here. That is the thing I want you to share. You don't have to convince people that Jesus is real. You don't have to tell them that the church makes a difference in the world. It does, and it is. But share the thing that you love, because undoubtedly the people you know might love that too. And what you're offering them is an opportunity to share something that you love with them in the hopes that they might love it too. In the same way that you might share a favorite recipe or a restaurant or coffee shop that you love to go to, or if you're me, a bar that you like to go to. You share something you love. I invite everybody I know to come to the Polish Home with me because I love the Polish Home. It's a great spot. And I better get in on that mug club if you restart it, okay? But church is the same way. And I was thinking that there's nothing I like better than coming here on Sunday morning. And I like going to the new place now too, but I love coming and being with a community that I get to be a part of and live my life with and travel through and go through the ups and the downs. And I've received so much support from so many people and various things that have happened in my life. And I hope that I can be supportive of you as well. But there's something powerful in community. And when I think about my own conversion, you know, what mattered most to me in coming to church wasn't, you know, sort of grappling with the issues of faith or doctrine. It was being in a place where I didn't feel like an outsider. And I hope that no one here ever feels like they're not at the heart of the community, because all of you are. There's no one who is outside of that. And that church was the place where I didn't have to feel alienated or I had to pretend to be someone else. That this is a place where we can be our genuine selves. Even sometimes when like our genuine selves is not very pleasant. It's a place where still we are loved and accepted and treasured and valued. And I want all of us to share that, because it's so amazing. And I don't want our church to be the best kept secret in town. I want it to be known. I want it to be known as a place where people can come and be accepted and be loved, and where they can be transformed and they begin to share that love out again in the world. As Jesus says, the world is full of terrible things happening all the time. And yet God's promises that Isaiah speaks about a community where we live in peace and in love and in mutual support and engagement. That is a real and tangible thing that we have created and that we are called to share so that every seat might be filled and that every body has an opportunity to know the transforming power of God's love. Amen. I invite you now to join with me in confessing the faith of the church in the words of the Nicene Creed, which can be found on page 358 of the prayer book.